Hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing well and preparing for your exams. So, in today's session, hello, Paramjeet. In today's session, we'll be discussing about the chapter Atoms and Molecules, which is the third part of your chemistry portion. So, before moving on to the chapter, let's have a quick review about how marks have been distributed among the different parts of your syllabus. So, as we all know, that matter, its nature and behavior, this is basically your chemistry portion and it includes all your four chapters. Hi, Krishna. And the rest of the parts are your physics and biology. So, your total chemistry portion covers 23 marks out of the total 80 marks of your syllabus. And the rest 20 marks are your internal assessment marks, which are given by your schools. So, your chemistry portion, it generally carries 23 marks. Now, moving on to the chapter, in this chapter we'll be discussing about how matter is what matter is composed of basically. So in the previous sessions we have studied about matter in our surroundings. In that we have studied about what is matter, what are the characteristics of matter, what are the different states of matter: solids, liquids, gases, plasma, Bose-Einstein, condensate, and how these states are interconvertible into each other. And also, we have studied about the various processes like evaporation, condensation, melting, freezing, sublimation. Also, we have studied about cooling effects of evaporation. After that, we have also studied about is matter around us pure, which is the second part, your second chapter of the syllabus. And in that chapter, we have studied about various components like your elements, compounds, mixtures, different types of mixtures, what are they basically composed of, their properties, solutions, true solution, solute, solvent, and many other things. Also, we have studied about the various separation techniques like filtration, your centrifugation, chromatography, distillation, fractional distillation, and many other. So we have up till now covered what is matter and how we can separate mixtures or whether the matter around us is pure or not. Now, in this chapter, we'll be studying about what matter is composed of. As we all know, that matter is composed of atoms, which is basically the smallest unit or the smallest divisible particle. The matter is divided into smallest particle, which is basically known as atom, according to Dalton's atomic theory. So Dalton was a scientist who gave a theory on this, studying after studying about atoms of various elements. He gave the theory that is known as Dalton's atomic theory. The postulates of this theory are that matter is made up of small indivisible particles, which are known as atoms. They cannot be divided further. Atoms of same element are identical in behavior, whereas atoms of different element are unidentical in behavior. Also there is a postulate given by Dalton which says that in a compound atoms of different element combine in a fixed ratio. So these are basically your properties or the postulates of Dalton's atomic theory. Moving on to the drawbacks of Dalton's atomic theory, we all know that atom is further divided into the subatomic particles like your electrons, protons, and neutrons. So the postulate that atom is indivisible is incorrect. Also, it is said that atoms of same element have identical properties or they are identical in nature. But we all know that there are isotopes, isn't it? Identical means similar. Riddhi, identical means similar. So we all know that isotopes do exist. They are atoms of same element with which have same atomic number but different masses. So in that case, the postulate given by Dalton is incorrect. Also, there are isobars, which means atoms of different element having same mass but different atomic number. So that is also one of the drawback of Dalton's atomic theory. Now, moving on, iron isotopes we'll be dealing in the next chapter in details. Don't worry about it right now. After that, we have also studied about the various laws of chemical combinations, which includes your law of conservation of mass, which was given by Lavoisier in 1774, and also law of constant proportion, which was given by Proust in 1779. According to the law of conservation of mass, it states that mass can neither be created nor destroyed, which means the total mass of the reacting species is equals to the total mass of the products formed. Also, the law of constant proportion states that in a compound, when the atoms of different element combine, they combine in a fixed ratio by mass. That is your law of constant proportion. Now, these atoms, they are represented by various symbols and chemical formulas. Now, we are again dividing atoms into ions and molecules. Ions, they are basically the charged species, and molecules, they are neutral clusters. For example, if I talk about H2O, then it is a molecule, whereas if I talk about Na plus, it is an ion, or Cl minus, it is an ion. Now, the ions are again of two types, that is anions, which includes your negatively charged ions like your Cl minus, your OH minus, F minus, Br minus, and many other. Similarly, we have cations, which are positively charged. No, Aditya, you cannot get these presentations to be downloaded. You can watch the videos for that only. So these cations, they are positively charged ions. Isotopes, Aditya, isotopes are the atoms of same element having same atomic number but different mass number. Exactly, Gautam. Neutral means no charge. Cations, they are positively charged ions like your Na plus, Al3 plus, and many other. Now, these ions can be monoatomic, that means containing one atom as well. Also, they are polyatomic. In case of monoatomic, the examples would be Cl minus, O2 minus, Na plus, all these are monoatomic ions. Whereas, if I talk about your polyatomic ions, it includes your OH minus, SO4 2 minus, PO4 3 minus, phosphate ion, sulfate ion, hydroxyl ion. Mg2 plus would be monoatomic, it's a cation. Fine, Akshita. Okay, now moving on to the molecules. Molecules are divided into two categories, molecules of elements, which includes your H2, O2, S8, and all of those. And the next is molecules of a compound, which are again of two types, ionic or covalent. Ionic molecules like your NaCl, where there are ions like Na plus and Cl minus. Whereas if you talk about covalent molecules, it would be your carbon dioxide, water, and many other. Correct, Manda. Now, the molecules of a compound, they are studied and their characteristics are also studied. Rakhi, ions are those species. Ions are basically atoms, which ions are formed from atoms by losing or gaining of electrons. Now, the properties which you have to study about the molecules of the compound are hard or soft, boiling point, melting point, conductivity, solubility, and brittle crystalline solid. So, this was the part of your matter. Sona, isomerism is not there in this chapter. Let's leave it for the rest of the part. Now, if we want to quantify matter, that means if we want to measure, then we can do so in two terms, in terms of number or in terms of mass. In terms of mass, it would be atomic mass and molecular mass. Discussing about your atomic mass, we all know that atomic mass is the mass of an atom, and that is generally measured in terms of your AMU, that is your atomic mass unit, now replaced by U, which is your unified mass, and it is given as 1 by 12th the mass of your carbon 12 atom of your C12 isotope. It is 1 by 12th the mass of carbon atom of C12 isotope. Similarly, the gram atomic mass it represents the mass of 1 mole of the atoms of that species, of that substance. Similarly, we have molecular mass. Molecular mass is the relative mass of a molecule as compared to the mass of C12 atom. Now, also the gram molecular mass, it states that the mass of 1 mole of that molecule of the substance. Now, discussing about in terms of number. Okay, one more important thing is your molar mass. Harish, covalent bonds are the bonds which are formed by sharing of electrons, whereas ionic bonds are those which are formed by the transferring of electrons. I hope you're clear with it now. Discussing about that, Aditya, just wait for a while. We'll be discussing about the concept of moles. Rakhi, molecules are the species. Molecules are formed when atoms combine with each other. Okay, now mole concept we'll be discussing about. When we want to quantify at matter in terms of number, then we are using mole concept. I'll come to that, Aditya. Just wait for a while. So before that, let's first discuss about your molar mass. Your molar mass is the mass of 1 mole of that substance, and its unit is gram per mole. Its unit is gram per mole, molar mass. Now discussing about, okay, basically your ions are, just give me a minute. Ions are your charged species. Ions are your charged species, and they are formed when an atom loses or accepts electron. For example, if I talk about sodium, then it loses one electron to form Na plus ion, which is a cation. Or if I talk about chlorine, then it accepts one electron and it forms Cl minus ion. Compounds we have discussed in the last chapter. Waziruddin, you can watch the video of that, of the previous session. You'll be clear with the concept what are compounds. I hope you're clear with this now, Dia. Now, moving on to the mole concept, which is one of the most important part of your chapter. And generally, most of the questions are asked from this mole concept. Let's quickly discuss about this. So now, what is mole? Mole is basically a link between the mass of the substance or the atoms or molecules with the number of atoms or molecules. Coming to that, Harish, just give me a minute. So mole is a relation between the number of atoms and molecules and the mass of atoms and molecules. Now let's quickly define what is 1 mole. So 1 mole, can any one of you tell me what is the definition of 1 mole? 1 mole of a substance is the amount of substance. 1 mole of a substance is the amount of substance which contains Disha, we are discussing about atoms and molecules, the third chapter, which contains the same number of atoms, or we can say same number of particles, as there are particles in, or we used to say as there are carbon atoms in 12 gram of C12 element. Exactly. We all know that 1 mole of a substance, it basically contains Na particles, or we can say entities, which could be atoms or molecules. And this Na is your Avogadro number, which is given as 6.022 into 10 raised to the power 23. Now, if I say that we have 1 mole of water, then we all know that water is a compound and it contains water molecules. Then this 1 mole of water will contain 6.022 into 10 raised to the power 23 molecules of water. Exactly. Now, if I say that it is 1 mole of sodium, then it would be 6.022 into 10 raised to the power 23 atoms of sodium, because sodium is an element. Exactly, Aryan. You can take it as 6.022 or 6.023. Both are acceptable. No issues in that. Now, what does this mean? This means that 1 mole of water is having this much molecules. That means we all know that molecular mass of water is 18 gram. And if I talk about molar mass, it would be 18 grams per mole. So 18 gram of water contains your 6.022 into 10 raised to the power 23 molecules. Rinku, we have already discussed about constant proportion. You can, okay, let me explain it again to you. See, if we talk about water, then we all know that in water we have two hydrogens, the mass of which would be 2 gram, and for oxygen it would be 16 gram. So here 2 gram of hydrogen is combining with 16 gram of oxygen, and if we calculate the ratio it would come out to be 1:8, which means that when hydrogen and oxygen will combine in the ratio of 1:8 by mass, then water will be formed. So in water, the elements, atoms of elements, they are combined in a fixed ratio by their mass. That is law of constant proportion. I hope you're clear with that. We have already discussed about that. Rinku, you can watch the video again. Now, okay, how to calculate the molecular mass? For example, if we have a molecule of carbon dioxide, now we all know that the mass of carbon is 12. Simply add the atomic masses of all the elements, atoms of all the elements. And what about oxygen? We know it's 16. So it would be 2 into 16 because there are 2 oxygen atoms in one molecule. Now, if we calculate it out, it would come out to be 12 plus 32, which is 44U. I hope it's clear now how to calculate the molecular mass. Waziruddin? Exactly. 1 mole of carbon is equals to 12 grams, Sona. Very good. Okay, so that was a quick review of all the topics of your chapter. And now discussing about what are the most important part of this chapter are your mole concept. This is one of the most important part of your chapter. Similarly, your atomic and molecular mass, you can be asked about to write down, to calculate the molecular mass by giving you the formula. What is the difference in mole and a molecule? See, mole is the unit to calculate the amount of substance. But molecule is not a unit. It's basically the combination of atoms. Also, you can be asked about writing down the law of conservation of mass or law of constant proportion, giving examples, and one of the most important part, which is your Dalton's atomic theory. You can be asked about to state the postulates of Dalton atomic theory along with writing down the drawbacks of that. So that was about your whole chapter, and I hope you all know how to write down the formulas of various compounds by crossing down the valencies. I hope you all know that. Exactly, Sarika. It is. Now, moving on to the important topics for your theory-based questions. We have already discussed that there. You can watch the video again. Waziruddin, generally, you are given the atomic masses of various elements in your exams, but for your safety, you should learn the atomic masses of general elements like your hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and all of those. How you can remember the valency of elements? Krishna, you have to relearn the valencies right now in your 10th grade, then you'll be able to learn, then you'll be able to know what is the easy way to learn it. Okay, now discussing about your theory based questions, atoms and molecules, you can be asked questions from them. What are atoms, what are molecules, what is the difference between them? You can be asked a question from your law of constant proportion or your law of conservation of mass. Similarly, you can be asked about atomic masses and molecular masses, what are the unit and how they can be calculated. You can be given questions on that. And the last one is your mole concept, which is one of the most important topic of your syllabus, which is relationship of mole to the mass of particles and the numbers. You have to go through this thoroughly. This is the most important part, and generally most of the questions are asked from this. Shashank, quicklime and slake lime are the part of your acid, bases, and salt. We have already discussed in the previous session. Conservation of mass. Okay, let me explain it to you once again. See, conservation of mass says that we all know that hydrogen and oxygen, they combine with each other to form water. First of all, the reaction is not balanced. Let's quickly balance it up. The balanced reaction would be this. According to this reaction, we all know the mass of one atom of hydrogen is 1 gram. And if we write down, the total mass would be 4 gram over here. And for oxygen, it would be 32 gram. Now, we all know that mass of one molecule of water is 18 gram. And since it's written 2, so to balance it, so the total mass would be 36 gram. This says that the total mass of reactants, this is the total mass of reactants, which comes out to be 36 gram, and which is equals to the mass of the products. You can see over here. This justifies your law of conservation of mass, which is saying that the mass of reactants and the mass of products is totally same. It does not changes during a course of a reaction. I hope it's clear now. Moving on to the next part, there is one thing that no practical based question is asked from this chapter. You don't have any practical related to this chapter. So, directly moving on to one of the questions of this chapter, how we can find the valency of the elements. See, right now you have to learn the valencies. You're not taught the way to find out the valencies. That you'll be taught in your 10th grade. Paris, you'll be learning that in your next grade. Don't worry about it right now. We have already discussed what is atomic mass, Disha. You can watch the video again for that. So the question says, what is the number of water molecules contained in a drop of water weighing 0.09 gram? So here you are given the mass of one drop of water. So mass of one drop of water is Nagavini. We can simply calculate the number of neutrons by subtracting the number of protons from your mass number. Exactly, we can do it by electronic configuration, Akshita. Yes, you have to learn only first 20 elements of your periodic table. Now we are given the mass of one drop of water, which is 0.09 gram. So this would be your given mass. Now we all know that the molar mass of water is what? Molar mass of water is what? What is the molar mass of water? Very good, Shashank. That's the correct answer. Exactly. It's 18 gram per mole. So molar mass of water is 18 gram per mole. How do we calculate the number of moles? Molecular mass is for the molecules. It's not for the elements. For elements, it's atomic mass. Now, number of moles can be calculated by given mass divided by molar mass. Now that the values we are having already, that is 0.09, we have chosen carbon as the standard. Aditya, earlier we used to choose hydrogen, oxygen, but now we have chosen carbon as a standard. That you'll be studying in your 11th grade. Don't worry about it. You won't be asked in the exam about that. 0.09 divided by 18, which will give you 0.005 moles. Now, after calculating the moles, we all know that 1 mole contains 6.022 into 10 raised to the power 23 particles, or in this case, if we talk about water, then it would be molecules. If 1 mole is having 6.022 into 10 raised to the power 23 particles or molecules, then in that case 0.005 moles will be having what? Simply multiply Avogadro number, that is your 6.022 into 0.05, and the value would be coming out to be 3.011 into 10 raised to the power 21 molecules. So this much molecules of water are present in 0.09 gram of a water droplet. I hope you all are clear with this question. Now moving on to the next question, which states that define 1 mole of a substance. So can any one of you tell me what is 1 mole of a substance? We have already written it on the board. So we all know that 1 mole of a substance is the amount of substance which contains the same number of particles. Archana, molecular masses are not of the elements. Molecular masses are of the molecules. You would be given the atomic masses of elements in the exam, and using that, you can calculate the molecular mass of the molecules. Okay, so we all know what is 1 mole of a substance. The definition is already written on your boards. Now let's see what is the next question. The next question is define Avogadro constant. So let's quickly list it down. What is Avogadro constant? So we all know Avogadro constant or Avogadro number is denoted by Na, and it is actual number of Disha, diversity in living organisms is a biology chapter, and the session has already happened for that. You can watch the video for that. Correct, Akshita, that's correct. So we were discussing about Avogadro constant. It is the actual number of particles. It is the actual number of particles in 1 mole of any substance. Exactly, Paramjeet, that's correct. Now we all know that Na is equals to 6.022 into 10 raised to the power 23. So this is your Avogadro constant. Now moving on to what are the important points which you should never forget while preparing this chapter. Let's quickly have a recap of all those things. So don't forget the symbols of various elements, like oxygen is represented by O, sulfur is represented by S, phosphorus is represented by P, whereas potassium is represented by K. Very good, Sona. That's perfect. So don't forget the symbols of various elements. The next thing is remember the valencies of various ions. Right now, you have to remember the valencies of various ions like carbonate ions, that is CO3 2 minus, the valencies 2, sulfate SO4 2 minus, PO4 3 minus. You have to, Avogadro was a scientist, Somnath. So you have to remember the valencies of these ions. Now practice few numericals based on the mole concept. As we have done one question related to mole concept. Practice few more questions related to mole concept because that is the most important thing, and one question for sure will be asked in your exam from this part. And the last is practice writing the formulas of compounds, as for example, like we have Na, which has valency 1, and we have Cl, which has valency -1. If we cross it out, the formula of the compound would be coming out to be NaCl. So you have to do this. What is the relationship between mole, Avogadro number, and mass? Mole is the relationship between the Avogadro number and the mass. See, 1 mole of substance, 1 mole of substance is equals to its molar mass, and this is also equals to Na particles. So this is the basic relationship between the three, which means the molar mass of a particular substance contains Na particles. So this is your relationship between molar mass, and your Avogadro number. No, Na is positively charged. It is a metal, it releases electron. So guys, this was about your chapter atoms and molecules. If you want more such sessions, then do like the video and subscribe to the Merit Nation channel. And to know how Merit Nation can boost your preparation for science with Power Pack premium courses, go through this link and send us your details. This URL is already available in the description below. Shashank, you can get more questions for MN Top 100 questions. Then please go through the link. That link is also provided below the video. You can go through that link and send us your details. We'll send you MN Top 100 questions from this chapter. So with this, we'd be ending the session. I hope the session was helpful to you all and you all learned a lot. With this, we would be ending the session. Bye, everyone, and all the best for your exams.